Octopus Energy Group is set to buy its sister company, Octopus Renewables, in a move that will add £3.4 billion worth of green energy projects to its asset management portfolio, making it one of Europe's largest operators and investors in renewable energy. Well, I'm delighted to welcome to the show Greg Jackson, CEO and founder of Octopus Energy. Greg, really nice to speak to you. Thanks for finding the time to speak to us. Just why are you having to buy your sister company? Why wasn't it part of your group in the first place?
Well, first of all, good morning. Look, I think the future of energy is that green energy will be cheap energy, but only if we can connect consumption to generation more directly. What you want is to be able to be charging your car, charging your electric car with green electrons when the wind's blowing. And really, the tighter we get in that connection between generation and consumption, the cheaper and faster we can go green.
Yeah, Greg, I was on your website and I hear what you're saying, like getting people to try and lose their electricity to non-peak areas, charging overnight. I saw that on there as well. So what is it that you can do that some of the bigger, more incumbent players haven't been doing?
Underneath it all, basically, energy is becoming a technology sector. You know, I think we now sit on 150 billion rows of data about real-time electricity consumption and generation. And I think the ability, it's a bit like what's happened in transport. You know, as you move from the minicab office where you had a bloke and a phone to the world of Uber, where you've got massive amounts of data matching supply and demand in real time. That's kind of where energy's going. And I think Octopus as a tech company kind of had a head start in building the technology to make that possible.
We've got a problem though, Greg, don't we, with the way energy companies are allowed to operate in this country, and you have been a beneficiary, no doubt, of Green Network Energy and Simplicity Energy ceasing trading. But are customers being thrown to the wolves here because they're being sold a greenwash promise? Ultimately, they sign up and then they get left without an energy provider. There's something wrong with the way this system is operating. How do you suggest it should be changed?
That's a great question. Look, the big challenge in the UK, and by the way, there are similar kind of dynamics in some other countries as well, is that traditionally energy companies would kind of lure customers in with prices that are totally unsustainable and then hike them a year later. And essentially what they've done is they've created this kind of unsustainable mash of kind of the prices you see on a comparison site may well not be economically viable. And then a year later, people are getting ripped off. And what we need to do is kind of bring the same sort of transparency to pricing in energy you've got in other sectors so that companies compete on the basis of long-term sustainable prices. By the way, that's what Octopus has done. And that's how we've built, you know, over 2 million household customers here in the UK and been able to really kind of start changing the way that sector works. The other bit in terms of kind of, you know, you talked about greenwash. The reality is last year in the UK, 42% of electricity was renewable. You know, increasingly, renewables are becoming the norm. And what we've got to do is enable companies like we are doing today to create this ever tighter connection so that if you're buying green energy, you know, you're getting green energy, but also that, you know, you're not massively overpaying for it because it is becoming the new normal.
What would you do with the government's decision on this Cumbrian coal mine? We understand why the arguments are there for it to be approved, but has coal passed its sell-by date?
You know, increasingly, I think we need to look at what a green industrial revolution can do. Amazingly, in the United States, for example, I think there are now 2 steel plants that are powered by solar energy. You know, we've got to imagine a world in which once we've got abundant green electricity generation, when the wind blows, you know, heavy industry is going to be able to operate cheaper than ever before, but do so with zero carbon, zero gilt.
Greg, I want to ask you about your company and where you go from here. Unicorn status or double unicorn status. You've grown very, very rapidly. You've had investment from the likes of Tokyo Gas and Origin Energy, so some traditional players in the industry. We know many are trying to reinvent themselves and would be seeing your company as a potential target. How long do you think you'd be an independent player in this type of market?
Look, today, about 11% of global primary energy is renewable. We've got to get that to 90% plus, right, to tackle climate change as fast as possible. So the amount of change that's going to happen in energy is going to be like, it's the biggest thing since the internet. And I think the companies that lead the way on that have got the opportunity to create value for society and for shareholders in ways which, you know, we've only seen in the biggest internet companies. So for us, our current shareholder base, being private, has served us incredibly well. And I've got to say, what is it? I think Goldman Sachs says it's going to be, $130 trillion of investment in the energy transition. There's no shortage of capital and there's no shortage of opportunity.
Can I ask you about some challenges with the grid? And we saw through the lens of Texas recently with a deep freeze that there were problems with renewable energy, and what was it, $900 to charge a Tesla at one point if you plugged in at the wrong time. Do you foresee any of those challenges in some of the markets you serve? Are you concerned that could happen at this point?
I'll tell you what, right? The number of times that we now turn on the news and we hear that there's a 1 in 50-year event or a 1 in 100-year event. What we saw in Texas, you can never ascribe a single event to climate change, but I think we can say that the Texas events prove that weather is unstoppable, and we can't afford to be mucking around with climate change any longer. And also, the reality with what happened in Texas is the biggest problem they had was natural gas. Natural gas froze, and they had a shortage of natural gas, so they didn't have enough for both heating and electricity generation. And I think, the reality is that there are plenty of countries that run on renewables all year round. Renewables done properly could actually have been a huge part of preventing Texas. And they're certainly going to help prevent the climate change that causes those extreme weather events.
Complete change of subject, Greg. No IT department, no HR. Very interesting for companies like my own, which has, very large, certainly latter one on the HR front as well. How can you do it without? Surely your employees' rights are diminished.
The exciting thing is that we started as a startup, right? And if you look at companies with 10 or 20 or 50 employees, they don't typically have a lot of those support departments. Instead, the people running the companies, the managers, take responsibility for actually managing. And I think one decision we made was that as we grew, we would try and grow our managers as though they were running their own business. And what that's meant is instead of foisting sort of a large top-down control structure upon them, we're instead encouraging them and providing all of their support, training, and capability to do it the way that, a successful small business does it. And that's really scaled well. And I've got to say, we've gone from, 0 people to over 1,200 in less than 5 years. I think we've grown about 500 people since the pandemic began. And our Glassdoor rating is in the top 5 of any company of our scale in the UK. So I think it works. It supports this. If you want to grow very, very quickly, it is so much easier if you're giving responsibility to well-trained, well-motivated people.
Greg, been a real pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. We look forward to speaking to you again soon. I saw the quote, you don't want to infantilise your employees as well. Drown creative people in process and bureaucracy. Hear, hear. Thanks, Greg. Greg Jackson, CEO and founder of Octopus Energy.